verification is right. I'm just not sure that the age 16 is appropriate. But that's progress. If we effectively, as I do, accept the point that we need some sort of control, then we can move to a proper debate about whether that's 16, 14, 13, whatever it may be. And, of course, there are age restrictions on things like Facebook. I think, from memory, it is 13.
Yes, but it's a tick box.
But it's a tick box, so all you can do is you can just knock. If you're 11 years old, you can just predate your date of birth by 2 years, and you can get on. I think what Australia is proposing is interesting because it will stop young people, maybe without their parents' knowledge, short-circuiting the system because they're going to be asking for proper age verification and ID. That's definitely something we should do in the UK because it's enforced in the existing law. Query, is 16 the right age, Miriam?
I completely agree with it. It's something I actually said should have been done before. And I think what is good about it is that for a long time, a lot of governments have been saying that the actual social media companies should take more responsibility, but they're not going to because it hurts their bottom line. The most voracious users are younger users. So they will pledge that, oh, I'll put the tick box in, but the kid is the one who's going to actually tick the box. So doing something like this is saying that, OK, we will put in legislation that damages your bottom line, and I think it will force the hand because they've said it's only 12 months and they will reevaluate it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock, which means it's time for tomorrow's newspapers tonight. Join us over the next hour to find out one of the main impacts on the UK of first cousin marriages. What is Robert Jenrick's immigration plan, apart from too late now because they're not in power? And we're leading the world at stopping something linked to climate crisis, and I think you'll like it. I'm Stephen Allen, and tonight I've got Leo Kirst and Paul Cox on my panel to take you through tomorrow's top stories. This is Headliners. Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's top stories with the three comedians. But before we get stuck into all the details, the nitty and the gritty, if you will, let's take a look at what Leo and Paul will have to work with Thursday's front pages. The Express has killed by the very adults who should have loved and protected her. The Telegraph goes with Labour bid to bulldoze the home counties. The Daily Mail has little Sara let down by everyone supposed to protect her. The Metro, not even a tear for Sarah. For The Guardian, we've got ministers to axe more than 10,000 civil service jobs in budget purge. And finally, the Daily Star, rise of the psycho scumbag chatbot zombies. That one makes sense, but for the rest, let's see what's happening on the front page. We'll go to the Daily Mail, first of all, Leo.
So the Daily Mail has the horrific story of Sara Sharif. So her parents, or I think father and stepmom, have been convicted, finally brought to justice after a decade of failure by the authorities. And the Daily Mail says, why does this keep happening? She's been let down by everyone supposed to protect her. So the courts, police, social services and teachers missed at least 15 chances to stop her being savagely murdered by her evil father and stepmother. I mean, in fairness, they do have, I mean, our services, child protection services, are very overstretched. And we've had the sort of breakdown of communities that would formerly you'd sort of keep an eye on each other. Neighbours would look out for each other and possibly notice or possibly intervene when something like this would happen. But now, communities are so atomised, and, we've had this mix of people around the country and, from overseas as well. So, a lot of people have been uprooted. I mean, I've come from Scotland to London. I don't really know my neighbours apart from one who I don't like. But But yeah, I mean, this is a horrific story, and it also, not to make excuses for the authorities that didn't notice things, but she was taken out of school and she was forced to wear a hijab, and so then they couldn't notice. I think a teacher or a social somebody from the authorities did notice bruising, but obviously under a hijab, it's harder to spot. So that could be that makes it more difficult.
Yeah. With moments like this, it's time to double down and say, yes, the services are under pressure, but the one job we expect from them is to be able to save kids.
Yeah, I mean, this is a harrowing story. It's all over the papers. You've only got to see the beautiful little girl that's on the front of all the pages to know that this is something that we should all kind of be hanging our heads in shame about, really. Because as a society now, we have, and I don't want to crowbar in culture war stuff into these stories, but as a society now, we've found ourselves unable to tackle certain cultural issues because we're at the risk of maybe being called racist or being challenged in a negative way. And I feel that when it comes to stories like this, we need to wake up. I mean, the fact that this young girl was going to school in a hijab to hide what was quite clearly some serious abuse. Had anyone at any point stopped and said, "Can I look under that hijab?" they would have been in quite serious trouble for doing so, but they may have saved a life.
Yeah. Do you think there is still that fear of being seen as being racist? No,
Are you joking?
But it's the one takeaway.
Literally, like yesterday, the Muslim Council of Britain put out a press release calling me Islamophobic because I talked about Muslim issues. I talked about grooming gangs. I talked about terrorism. Now we're talking about this. What, we're supposed to ignore this?
No, but to my point, clearly it's not silenced you. So that is, if anything, evidence that you're not silenced by it. And if you are in the police or one of these services, then hopefully one of the lessons we've learned after all these stories is actually you can report higher up about these things. No,
absolutely not. There's still a culture of don't mention anything that could get you into trouble. There's still, we've still got a public sector that's dominated by critical race theory that says, they literally have classes on how to abolish whiteness and all this sort of nonsense. So they're very captured by this sort of this grim, racist, anti-white ideology that elevates all other minorities above white people, above I guess native Brits. And it's really a shame. We're seeing children die, not just in this case, but I mean, for example, the Manchester Arena bomber. A security guard saw the man walking in with a backpack and didn't stop him because he was afraid of being called racist if he stopped him. So children are just being sacrificed on the altar of political correctness, and it's absolutely horrific to see.
Well, here's a sentence you don't often say in these kind of shows. For something a bit lighter, let's go to the Telegraph. Paul, what you got for us?
Labour bid to bulldoze the home counties. So this is the Tories are claiming that planning blitz for new homes will mean local opposition is swept aside as the government being accused of trying to bulldoze through the home county. This is Angela Rayner once again. And I mean, what can I say? Labour appear to hate the countryside. This is something we've always kind of understood about Labour, is that Labour are for the people of the cities and the Conservatives tend to be for the people of the countryside. But it's never been more true than it is now, what with the farmers.
Fox hunting ban was even more true than this, wasn't it? That was a good example.
Yeah, no, it's devil's advocate, well played, Steve. But I do think that what they're going to play sort of. They're going to ride roughshod over the planning laws here. That's what's happening. That's what's going to happen with this particular story. Is it's going to become easier for them to build on that land because they're not going to put the power with the local authorities, which is something they've always said that they would do with absolutely everything else. But when it comes to building and trying to hit their housing target or building prisons, whatever they want to do, they are just going to say no. We're going to make that decision centrally. And I think therein lies the issue because whilst we do have a housing issue. Half of our problem is the ability to build quickly, and it doesn't matter where you do it. And if you start just building all over green land and disrupting the countryside, there's going to be all sorts of problems. They're going to get mired. It's going to end up costing more because they get mired in local lawsuits. People aren't just going to stand for this. We've seen with the farmers when it comes to inheritance tax. People who live in the countryside that have deliberately moved out of the city to live somewhere where there is fresh air, they're not going to want to see this kind of thing.
Yeah, and so it's been a long while. Normally, if you talk about the lack of prison space, people of the right say, well, build more prisons.
Yeah.
And they start to build more prisons and they say, well, not there.
Not there.
Well, yeah, maybe don't build them in the village green in Chalfont St Giles. You know what I mean?
They're on plan.
They're probably
Delightful.
Angela,
I
I mean,
hope I get sent there.
the whole essence of the Labour Party is to punish the rich, to punish the sort of what they see as the enemy, the Tory areas, and also what they want to do. They want to build high density housing in Tory voting areas, such as the home counties, so that they can then move people who will vote Labour there and tilt the electoral arithmetic.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to move people there. That would happen naturally. It's not like they'll be deliberately shipping them in. You build cheap housing in enough supply, you will fill it with Labour.
But they will deliberately ship people there. They've got Operation Scatter, which is they've openly said we're going to take illegal immigrants or migrant cross-channel migrants, and they say we're going to make it fair. So everywhere in the country has to take their fair share, because at the moment they tend to go to big cities, and big cities already vote Labour, so they're not doing the Labour Party any good there. So they're going to move them out to Tory voting areas.
Sounds delightful. We have to go to the Financial Times now, Leo, because there's no other newspaper that could give us this story.
Which one in particular? Is this the Farmers?
Yeah, there's not on any other front page.
Oh yeah, so I mean that really is incredible. So basically, thousands of farmers descended on Westminster. Well, not descended. They didn't airlift them in. They're in tractors, so they couldn't. I mean,
the farmers have a para unit now. Nice.
Yeah. So they drove there in their tractors. So they probably set off about 3 months ago, and yeah, they've filled Westminster with tractors, and it's a bit more civilised than the farmer protests we see in France, where the first thing they do is get big tanks of slurry and spray it up against the politicians' windows. And that's a shame. I used to work on Whitehall in the Foreign Office, and we actually had chainmail curtains in case there were bombs, but we didn't have any protection against manure.
Because it did sound, chainmails doesn't do you any good. It just strains it. You get the wet bits, but not the chunks.
Not the straw.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, none of the straw, just all of the stinkier bits. I don't know where to go after that.
I mean, I just want to say that this is amazing to see protests of this nature. The farmers, they're really not being heard. And you can tell, I know people... Exactly.
Fun.
But people will be listening to this thinking, if you're listening to this channel, you're thinking we hear about it all the time. But trust me, it's not being ubiquitously broadcast absolutely everywhere else. And if you look across, you only have to look across left-leaning parts of media and social media to see that there's hardly any support for the farmers. They see all farmers as Jeremy Clarkson. Now, he's been a great bastion for this, but the problem with Jeremy Clarkson is he's a multi-millionaire who invested in a farm to save himself from tax. But I think we can ignore that because he's championing I think he's championing a good cause. But what is being thrown away in this is all of these, day-to-day farmers that are earning £20,000 to £30,000 a year, but working 24 hours a day to do so, 365 days a week. And they're essentially, all of them are going to be liable for inheritance tax. Where you and I, not all of us will be liable for inheritance tax. It will depend on how much wealth is within our family. Every single farmer is going to get caught out by this.
And I trust farmers that have farmed that land for generations. I trust them a lot more than I trust some, foreign sovereign wealth fund or BlackRock, somebody who just wants to make money. Somebody who just wants to make money will come in and, put solar farms or use it for carbon offsetting or something like that. You can't eat carbon credits. And that's something that the left are going to realise. The left always come in and, when the far left get into power, and I think we've got, I think they'd admit themselves they're a pretty hard left Labour Party. When they get into power, they start messing around with the farms, like Stalin says, we're going to collectivise all the farms and it's going to be great. Everybody starves to death. Mao is like, we're going to collectivise all the farms. Everybody starves to death. Now they're doing it, via BlackRock and stuff. BlackRock are going to collectively run the farms. And, how's it ended in the past? And also, if we go to war with Russia, if we go to war with China, and they blockade the UK, as happened in World War II, where are we going to... All of a sudden, the tomatoes that you get from Gambia or whatever won't be able to get here. So what are you going to eat?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose just to push back, and that is my job, isn't it, as host, to give the balance. If we are going to starve to death, it will take longer due to how obese we are as a nation. So at least we've got a run-up, do you know what I mean? We've got a bit of space time there before we all get dead.
And we'll be out of breath because of that run-up. There's also a story here, because city finance is quite a big issue at the moment because some firms are leaving the FTSE 100 and they're listing in other markets. So I think Just Eat is dropping its UK listing. There's another huge company, I can't remember the name of it, that's going to get listed in America because it's easier to raise finance through American markets, through European markets, because of Labour's tinkering with tax and all the rest of it. So, you know, we're sort of declining. Britain gets such a dividend. We make so much money from London being a sort of financial hub. And somebody's making the case that bosses, UK company bosses, must be paid like footballers if the UK is to compete, says this city financier, who obviously has his eye on one of those jobs. So wants to... And the thing is, I mean, he's kind of got a point, because, you know, people say, oh, the CEO is getting paid £1 million. That's more than the cleaners is worth. Nobody ever complains about footballers getting £30 million.
Well, no, I think some people complain about that. But
I'm
also,
complaining about it right
if
now.
you're absolutely terrible as a footballer, you don't get the money. I think what people... you'd probably stomach stories about City bosses earning loads if, when they failed, they didn't walk away with another couple of million in the back pocket going, thanks for trying. The golden parachute thing. That's what winds people up, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, look at the wonders that modern capitalism has bestowed on us. Look at these amazing razor-sharp television screens that have been created.
It's ruined rock and roll, because these days, if you throw one out of a hotel window, so what? It'll float to the ground like a leaf. Yeah. It's not like the old days. We can quickly go to The Guardian, Paul. What are they treating us?
Ministers to axe more than 10,000 civil service jobs in budgets purged. It's a bit like turkeys voting for Christmas, isn't it? They would have all... most civil servants would have probably voted for Labour, expecting a nice ride from here on in. And it turns out they're going to have all their budgets purged and they're going to lose their jobs, which is going to be an interesting... Well,
I'd just like to point out, this is actually... They were supposed to... The Tories were going to purge 66,000 civil servants. So these were extra civil servants that were taken on over COVID that they wanted to get rid of. So this is really... a sort of real this is really hiring 56,000 more that we don't need. So the Guardian, of course, is painting it as, you know, some sort of civil service purge. In fact, it's like a gross overspend in the civil service.
Yeah, and they'll all take early voluntary redundancy and be OK.
With their copper-plated, gold-plated...
That's good, isn't it? At least they're doing well in the current economy. Well, that's the front pages sorted, but on the way next, how do you solve a problem like full prisons? What's the downside of the 2034 World Cup, and why marrying your cousin might be bad? You do save money on Christmas gifts for your grandparents. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Bansky's Girl with Balloon is arguably one of the artist's most recognisable images. So when a limited edition print signed by the artist was stolen from Grove Gallery in London, an investigation was launched by the Metropolitan Police's flying squad. The work was thankfully retrieved. The desire to own great works of art has once again become evident this week, albeit a little further afield on the continent. Police in Italy have uncovered a criminal network forging artworks by Bansky, Andy Warhol, Pablo Picasso and others. Investigators said that they've seized more than 2,100 fake pieces of art with a potential market value of about £165 million. With me to discuss that case is the Chief Executive of Grove Gallery, James Ryan.
The art world needs to tighten up. It is known as a bit of a Wild West out there because people will try and chance it with these forgeries. You're quite right, there's only one actual original, but even auction houses have been hoodwinked before.
The burglary that you suffered is sub judice, so we have to be careful what we say about it. But it must have been a bit of a shock to you. I mean, was it a broken window, a smashed door?
At 10, 11 o'clock at night and just hammer straight through, shoulder barging through the door and then in and out. You know, gone in 60 seconds. I must say, I know...
Obviously, they had a targeted attack. The person would have known what he or she was after. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I must must say, I know they cop a lot of flack, the police force, but the flying squad got the artwork back within 3 days. They were fantastic. So yeah, I've never heard or seen, other than the Thomas Crown affair type film, I just didn't think it'd be happening to little old me, in Fitzrovia, but it did, and thankfully we got it back.
GB News.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen, still joined by Leo Kearse and Paul Cox. If you'd like to get involved, you can get to gbnews.com/yoursay. Andy says, cows have been around and breaking wind for over 10,000 years. Why is it only a problem now? I don't think we mentioned it, but I'm glad that's right at the front of your mind. Good point. But it's not necessarily an episode one. Leo, The Telegraph. Robert Jenrick has a great plan to solve prison crisis, if only he was in power earlier this year.
Yeah, so Robert Jenrick says, deport all foreign criminals and scrap visas for countries that refuse to take them back. So he's the Shadow Justice Secretary now, and he said the removal of 10,500 foreign national offenders currently in prisons in England and Wales would clear 12% of the 86,000 places in overcrowded jails. And he says these are the sort of things I would be doing as Justice Secretary, but I would suggest that Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood, who's the current Justice Secretary and Prime Minister, obviously, for ideological reasons are happy to release these people in a way that I certainly never would be. You might know Robert Jenrick. He was in a political party called the Conservatives, who brought in all these foreign criminals and
didn't release them.
And had these rules themselves. So,
did it for ideological reasons then, you'd imagine?
No, I think I genuinely think the Conservatives did it for reasons of laziness and taking their eye off the ball and not really being that bothered. But yeah, apparently Miss Mahmood is considering proposals to deport foreign offenders jailed for crimes in the UK as soon as they're convicted, rather than allowing them to serve their sentences in Britain and then deport them. And of course, the trouble with this is if you deport them straight away, they can just come straight back in. So it's like just releasing them into the wild, unless they also introduce border control, which I mean it's been tried on countries before. We can maybe try it in Britain, but it's incredible how much the window has moved. I mean, for a sort of Labour Justice Secretary, for any Labour politician to be saying, "Oh, we're going to deport foreign offenders," I mean that would be decried by the Muslim Council of Britain as horrific racism.
It might still be, yeah. I mean, it's a good idea, isn't it? But it's just a shame that human rights do not differentiate between criminals and victims. So what we end up with is a situation where each of these criminals hold just as much value in society and within communities as they would do whether they were a criminal or a victim. So it makes it very, very difficult under current law, particularly, I hate to say, under the ECHR, to put this into practice. What you'd end up with is just this quagmire of legal... Because let's not forget, there are a whole cohort of rather cynical capitalist human rights lawyers in this country in particular that have been more than happy to delve straight into this stuff and defend these people to the hilt, make plenty of money and weigh the whole thing down so nothing really happens.
So you don't like capitalists? Interesting.
Well, yes, maybe that's what I'm saying.
It's an interesting way to out yourself, right?
Got myself in quite a twist.
We do have the legal right to deport people who, if you are found guilty of a crime, I think there's a certain minimum. It's like being de-seated as an MP, isn't it? If your crime is so bad, then your visa can be revoked. Things like this, but we just haven't been doing it.
This is the point, isn't it? Because there's 10,500 of these foreign criminals in our jails. If we removed all of those, we wouldn't need to build the 14,000 new cells that we'd need. Yeah. We'd only need to build 3,500 cells.
And also I've seen Syria's been emptying its jails this week, so there's some spaces freed up there. Could we send them there? They seem like they seem quite tough, quite robust.
Yeah.
Could we just topple Keir Starmer and free everyone in prison and just go for it? He's
not had a big statue made of himself yet. So can't topple, as we learned, you can't topple until you got one of those big metal statues that's very easy to bend over. Why did they, not that I'm ever going to be a dictator, but if I am, I want a solid one that's made of concrete that's reinforced.
Man,
how have they not learnt this yet?
I know. I saw a video of the Islamist rebels were pulling down a Christmas tree, and this thing was tougher to bring down.
Yeah,
whatever stand that is.
Bending, didn't
I mean, the normal stands that you get in the UK, you can just knock them down with a cat. So, you know, whatever this was, I really need to. It almost looked like he was showing the Christian people of Syria, like, I'm just testing your stand to show how solid it is. Because, you know, we respect you so much.
Good. Let's hope that was the take-home message from that. Paul, The Guardian, meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has a different way to keep migrant numbers down.
Yeah, just to even things out, many migrant workers will die, in inverted commas. The likely human cost of awarding the 2034 World Cup to Saudi Arabia, of course, they have been awarded that today. And millions of migrants, according to The Guardian, will build the stadiums, transport networks and hotels, largely from the Bangladeshi community, and they're likely to die. Now, of course, this is a problem. It was a problem in Qatar. There are a number of deaths there. Even building that within the last 10 years, they had the sort of number of deaths you'd expect building a stadium, you know, in Victorian Britain without scaffolding or whatever. But, of course, this is a story about The Guardian pretending to care, because The Guardian don't actually do anything about these stories. They never do. They're always there on the sidelines writing things with their vegan pens and making sure that the footballers have got their armbands on, but they do absolutely nothing about it.
In fairness, they are journalists.
Yeah, well, but they never live by their convictions, so they don't go into society. They really don't do anything. You ever met a Guardian journalist who's actually doing anything other than posing for a photograph for their column or writing about something they don't like? They're never actually doing anything.
They've gone on strike. How's that for a
well, that's just socialism for you, isn't it?
You've changed. You're a socialist like 2 sentences ago.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that these stadiums are going to be built by a lot of it's sort of modern-day slavery. They tell the story of a Bangladeshi guy who went there, then his visa was taken off him by his employer, and then he ended up working for food and lodging. He was essentially a slave, and then he died. He had health problems, couldn't get any treatment there, had to borrow money, and he was found dead. So, I mean, that's essentially, you know, modern slavery. So we're going to have all these virtue signalling footballers with their rainbow armbands and rainbow laces taking the knee on stadiums that are built on the bones of slaves. I mean, it's just sickening hypocrisy. But also, I'm amazed. You know, 2 million Bangladeshi migrant workers in Saudi Arabia. I can't believe they go to Saudi Arabia to work and have all the issues, you know, potential issues and risks there when they could just come to the UK and probably make more money in the first week signing on than they do in Saudi Arabia having to work for a living.
Yeah. They always say some people want to see politics not involved in football. Stop holding your World Cups in places where there really is a political thing that needs to be talked about. Do you know what I mean?
Where's the next one going to be? The Cambodian killing fields.
A lot of space, so they could probably knock up a stadium, fair enough. Leo, the Daily Mail, we need specialists because of the high rate of first cousin marriages, and we don't just mean banjo teachers.
Oh, my God. So this is an NHS... The NHS is calling for midwives specialising in inbred babies. And this is as Labour refuses to back the ban on marrying first cousins. So the former Conservative Minister, Richard Holden, tabled a motion, a private member's bill that would hopefully lead to a change in the law, outlawing cousin marriage, saying studies show that cousin marriage is associated with approximately double the rate of birth defects compared to the general population and can reinforce negative structures and control women. However, Iqbal Mohammed, who's an independent member of Parliament, claimed that such unions, cousin marriages, could build family bonds. I mean, yeah.
It's got you there,
I guess pumping your cousin is sort of a family bond. But, I mean, is it the sort of family bond you want? And it also puts families on a more secure financial foothold. I mean, I guess because you don't need to buy as many Christmas presents for everybody. You know?
You've got the same grandparents.
Yeah, and also it's very easy to make your... You don't need to spend a lot of money on a genealogy site building your family tree. It's just 3 people holding hands in a circle. So, yeah, it's ridiculous. But I don't know, then on the other hand, you know, people are saying we should ban it. I mean, do we really want to ban it? Do we want to tell people? I think people should be free to marry whoever their parents decide they should marry.
Yes, I know. There was a good thing at the end. Sorry to ruin it. But at the moment, we outlaw marrying your sister, marrying your parents. So actually, the state does have a role to play in saying, do you know what, there are some people you shouldn't marry because look at the kids who get churned out of that.
But then we don't know what, you know, this guy's cousin looks like. She could be really hot. So, you know, cut him some slack. And also, it's a British tradition. Look at Queen Victoria and Prince Albert.
True. Yeah, I mean, I'd be in favour. People online have been doing that. That's for their go-to. Like, what about the royal family? Yeah, I'm in favour of banning them from doing it as well. Like, don't worry. I'm not like, no, this is the one perk of being royal. Look at the cousins. I mean, look at the cousins.
They all look like misshaped potatoes after about 3 generations as well, don't they?
That's why they called it King Edward. That's probably a fact.
I mean, there is some science involved in this, Steve, and this article actually comes with a diagram which shows, I mean, it uses the names Ruby and Adam, which I don't think is that common.
What have you written in there instead? You can't show that. Oh, no.
It's funny, every time you see white people in an advert, you know it's for something bad.
You can't... what you can't see in this is the colours, because our producer printed it in black and white.
Good.
However, what it shows you is at least one in 4, 25% of your children will be in a bad way once they're born. A good chance of 50% of your kids will be in a bad way when they're born. Yeah. So what I'd like to ask all 300-odd Labour MPs, because some of you will be watching, why are you supporting this? Why aren't you against it? Why aren't you? Well, tell me, because if it's culture war, if it's ideology, if you're afraid of offending people, well, just think about the kids that you're damaging.
I don't think there's a 25%. I think that's if you're carrying the recessive. Both parents carry the recessive gene, but then also the other children could be then carriers of the healthy carriers of the gene as well. But I mean, the numbers are still quite low, but they're kind of startling. Like half of the deaths of under ones are in some areas are due to genetic conditions caused by cousin marriage. So yeah, I mean it's horrific, and obviously any children dying or being ill is bad. So yeah,
I mean, we have seriously reached the part of the end of our civilization where we specifically need midwives for inbred babies.
Even today, I was thinking this is the day that I detach from reality, where you now have to worry about not offending the cousin pumpers. Are you sure? Surely that was the one group you could always ever go at, and normally you'd presume it's like southern parts of America. But now you've got to be culturally sensitive about people who fancy their cousins.
And that's the argument against any sort of discussion of this or outlawing the marriage, is that it's racist and Islamophobic and all the rest of it is absolutely insane.
Well, still to come then, puberty blockers blocked, how to get money from the army and how you may have wasted your money on that Iranian OnlyFans subscription. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. The next 24 hours will be rather gloomy for most of us, with a lot of low cloud, mist and fog, some patchy drizzle too, but clear and frosty for some, most notably those areas that have seen sunshine during the last 24 hours. Scotland, mostly central and northern parts of mainland Scotland, where we'll see clear spells continuing overnight. Frost widely forming under those clear skies and some patches of fog. But eastern Scotland and the far north and west, mostly cloudy. Likewise for Northern Ireland, England and Wales. And in fact, across the east of England, increasingly low cloud will lead to a gloomy start to Thursday, with largely drizzly rain starting to move in from the North Sea, and that will reach parts of the Midlands by dawn, and it's going to be dreary and damp in these areas. Southwest England, similar conditions, but for the west and north of Wales, perhaps some brightness coming through. Likewise for the far north of Northern Ireland, but otherwise Northern Ireland's mostly cloudy. The cloud beginning to spill into southern Scotland as well. But elsewhere across Scotland, where we do have the clear skies overnight, it's going to be a chilly start to the day, and in some spots, once again, temperatures will struggle above 0 throughout daylight hours. Some patchy fog persisting in places as well. But the gloomiest skies, I suspect, by now will be across much of England into East Wales as well, with outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. 8 to 10 Celsius in the south, a little milder compared with the recent days, but staying cold for parts of Scotland. Now, by Friday morning, the low cloud in the south and east will be spilling its way into southern Scotland as well as western Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland. So for most of the UK, Friday is a cloudy day. There'll be outbreaks of rain and drizzle as well. But into the weekend, those outbreaks of rain will start to sink south and introduce milder air across the board.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. You can get your say by going to gbnews.com/yoursay. Just quickly, Jackie says, guys, please move your chairs closer. You do realise COVID is over. That's Jackie wanting some erotic fan fiction over there. Let's move close a bit. Let's just do a quick recap of the front pages before we crack on. The Express, killed by the very adults who should have loved and protected her. The Telegraph goes with Labour bid to bulldoze the home counties. Daily Mail, little Sara let down by everyone supposed to protect her. The Metro, not even a tear for Sara. And The Guardian, ministers to axe more than 10,000 civil service jobs in budget's purge. And the Daily Star, finally, rise of the psycho scumbag chatbot zombies. Got all the keywords in. Leo, The Metro, and a shocking news story about someone sleeping with a 17-year-old. The shocking bit is it was an 18-year-old and not a middle-aged TV presenter.
So, an 18-year-old British man has been jailed for a year after he had sex with a 17-year-old Londoner he met in Dubai. So this is Marcus Fakana from Tottenham, who was given the one-year sentence after he was arrested in his family's hotel in the UAE, United Arab Emirates. So he was on a getaway with his family when a secret holiday romance blossomed with a girl who is now 18 but was 17 at the time. So he said, we really liked each other, but she was secretive with her family because they were strict. My parents knew about our relationship, but she couldn't tell hers. She had to meet me without telling them it was to see a boy, but when the girl flew back to London, and then the police showed up at the Marks at his family's hotel. Shouldn't be laughing, he's in jail in Dubai, and took the teen into custody. And the police, apparently there's lots of errors in the case. They said he was older than 19 and he was from Pakistan, but he's a British citizen. But as Steve pointed out in the break, should I say, do you want to say it?
No, you go for it, yeah. I think this is a truth. It needs to be said.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of this, but she waited until, like, the girl's mother waited until they were back in London to inform the authorities. And so, because if she'd have said, while they were in Dubai, they'd have gone to jail as well. The girl would have gone to jail and would probably now be being flogged in a future football stadium in Saudi Arabia or whatever.
Exactly. It needs looking at, doesn't it? I mean, this story makes me grateful for the fact that all of my holiday trysts were in Skegness. At the time, I was complaining.
Yeah.
But now I'm very grateful.
Never got arrested, though, Steve, did you?
Well, not for that.
It's, well, you know, it feels like a bit of a non-story to me, this.
It should be, shouldn't it?
On the basis that, of course, we, and probably most of our viewers, don't consider this sort of holiday romance to be anything morally bad. But, of course, this is Dubai. There are very strict laws on these things. If you're going to undertake this type of behaviour, don't do it in Dubai, would be my advice. And, you know, I feel like I probably should say that in case there's any 18-year-olds out there thinking, I'm going to Dubai this Christmas and I am going to have a good time. You're not. Just behave yourself, go for a swim and come home.
Fair enough. Good advice from your old uncle there. Put his arm around you, go for a swim.
It sounded so sinister.
Cold water will sort you right out. Paul, The Telegraph, and if you want to delay puberty now, you just have to get into Dungeons and Dragons. That seemed to work at my school.
Yes, you did. Brilliant. Puberty blockers for under-18s banned after warning of unacceptable risk to children. Can you, Adam and Eve, it? Existing emergency measures in the UK outlawing sale and supply to be made indefinite following official advice from medical experts. Now, my chair has just dropped 6 inches whilst I read that. In case anyone wonders if I'm having some sort of stroke, I'm not, as far as you're aware. But this is a victory, isn't it? This is a victory for child protection. This is a victory for the Cass report, and it's also probably a well done to Wes Streeting, because against all the pressures that he would have been under ideologically within Labour, he, as Health Secretary, has pushed this through. He said he would, he has done, and now we're protecting children from unnecessary genital mutilation. I think Dr. Hilary Cass, she probably gets a lot of a mention on this channel. We've all spoken about her, but doesn't get enough of a mention in this. Now, she never set out in her position to try and eradicate this. All she's done is what's been waiting to be done with this issue is proven that scientifically puberty blockers don't have any real benefit at all, and they cause more harm than they do good. So I think this is a good news story.
So, Leo, just to recap then, Labour banning puberty blockers, deporting more foreign criminals than the Tories, and I believe saying that Whitehall was not necessarily a swamp, but relaxing into tepid failure or something like that. The question is, when are you going to start voting Labour?
Probably the next election, the way things are going. But yeah, I mean, they have actually been, on certain things, a minor improvement to the Tories, which shows how catastrophic the Tories were. And this continues the sort of, like you mentioned, a few common sense things they've done. This is another common sense thing. You know, these puberty blockers, they lead to sterility and all kinds of health problems. And also, once the kids are on them, it's very unlikely they're going to deviate from the path to transitioning. So, and you know, gender dysphoria, although, you know, I'm sure it's real, I'm sure some people benefit from transitioning. In most cases, puberty resolves the issue, and you go back to, you know, because everybody, when you're a teenager, everybody feels like they're in the wrong body, and you know, people have always been. Look at David Bowie and all the rest of it. It's not like, you know, a man is Hulk Hogan and a woman is, you know, whatever it is. You can be Sandy Toksvig, you can be, you know, Mick Jagger. There's various ways you can be. Also, I mean, part of me just thinks, just let people have the puberty blockers. If liberal, because it's just liberal kids. It's just these annoying theatre kids who get them, you know what I mean? And like, and the sort of nauseating liberal parents who just want to one-up their neighbours at the dinner party, you know, by, oh, your child's gay, well, my child's trans. Oh, ding, 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 ding. Oh, top bingo prize for being a liberal parent, you know what I mean? Like, so let them have that. Let them sterilise. Let them remove their DNA from the bloodline if they want to do that. If all these liberals want to do that, how about you do that? How about you do that? How about you make the remainder of your life and your relationship with your kids awkward because you destroyed their life?
I'm going to take that to mean you're not going to be voting Labour. You've decided to move further just to make sure there's some
and
blue water.
Also, I don't think it's a good idea to drug and sterilise and maim children. You know, even though, you know, there is a certain, you know, I can see the appeal.
Every time you almost save yourself a bit, you have to put the end of the sentence in there. Lovely work. Right, Leo, to The Independent. And the last time we were on, actually, we were talking about the song In the Navy and that it was a gay anthem. Here's what we got wrong.
So, LGBT veterans, they've left off the rest of the letters. I don't know why, maybe The Independent's asexual phobic. But LGBT veterans are to receive £70,000 for historic mistreatment in the armed forces. Sadly, you can't just say, if you served in the armed forces, you can't just say, oh, by the way, I was gay. I touched this guy in the showers. It was very enjoyable. So can I have the £70,000, please? It's for former LGBT military personnel who've been dismissed or discharged because of their sexual orientation. They'll receive apparently £50,000, while there's going to be additional payments of up to £20,000 handed to veterans who are negatively impacted by the ban during their time in service. Some have faced lifelong consequences, including diminished career prospects, being vilified by family and friends, and no access to their military pensions. I mean, I get the pensions bit. That's horrific. I can't believe, you know, if you serve your country, I mean, and there's obviously been plenty of LGBT people who have served and, you know, should be recognised. You know, when we wear the poppy, we wear it for them as well. You know, they spilt their blood. You know, everybody's blood is red. I mean, it's disgusting that, you know, some of them were treated like this by the military, but they're vilified by family and friends. You can't sort of blame the army for that.
Yeah, the family and friends should be stumping up some of the cash in that situation. Paul, this is a case of making up for an embarrassing discharge. I once had... Well, anyway, back to the story. What are your thoughts on it?
You always come to me with a joke, and it just completely ruins me every time. I mean, I would argue this is obviously a good thing. I mean, we look here from the view of 2024, which is often a mad place to be, but we're looking back now, and the idea that lesbian and gay people, bisexual people, were punished in our Royal Navy during that particular time seems absolutely alien to us now. I mean, we don't consider any of these people really minorities anymore because and rightly so, because they feel very much part of our community. I mean, it says LGBT. I'm not sure there's T involved in this. There'd be quite a few people that would argue that perhaps the T was unnecessary.
Do you think
in
there was
this?
Some of them turning up for the boot parade or whatever you call it. What's it called? Boot parade? It's not a boot parade, is it?
Passing out parade?
Passing out parade, like in full-on ball gown.
It wasn't happening, was it? It wasn't happening. But let's not take away anything from this victory. I have no issue with this whatsoever. It's £75 million well spent.
Yeah. It's like when you get more details about the Alan Turing story and you realise how wrong we were as a nation. Someone who effectively ended the war years quicker, and look how we treated him. So, yeah, we definitely did some stuff bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, still to come, bad news for those who don't have a lot of sex, and good news for Alex Jones, the bald, bearded one, not the one-show one, unless she's been messing up the HRT. Find out next. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
A Jaguar has ditched its growling big cat logo as part of what can only be described as a woke rebrand. The badge that has been used for decades, look at it, beautiful, on the bonnets of luxury cars has been swapped for a curved geometric J badge. They've also released a brand new advert, look at it, for their rebrand, which prompted Elon Musk to ask if the company actually sold cars. I thought this was a wind-up. It's not. It's true. And joining me now to discuss this is the motoring journalist, Amanda Stratton. Amanda, what on earth is going on at Jaguar? The car of James Bond, Batman, Arthur Daley has gone off the scale woke. Please make me make sense of it.
The E-Type is an absolutely iconic car, and it's important that people remember that, in fact, in its heyday, Jaguar was an incredibly prestigious brand, more so really than other British brands like Aston Martin, for example. But, you know, people in the industry are left sort of scratching their heads because you need to do something bold, you need to do something that catches people's attention, but you also need to stay true to who you are and what you are, and I'm not sure that this is it.
Amanda, that could be an advert for anything. It could be cat food. It could be Karl Lagerfeld. It could be literally anything apart from a Jag. Well, I mean, honestly, I mean, OK, we're talking about it. So we are talking about it, but we're not talking about it for the right reasons, are we?
And I think if I was going to be speculative here, I would like to think that this is actually all part of a cunning plan to get everybody talking about it. Yeah. So when they do launch the first new car that we're going to see, which, you know, people have been waiting, as I say, since 2001.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. If you'd like to get involved, gbnews.com/your say, where Lynn says, oh my God, the NHS specialist inbred midwife on an inbred ward, they could call it Keep It in the Family Ward. They're doing their own jokes. There's so much doing their own jokes that Andy says, and Andy, I don't know your accent, I'm going to do it in the voice. It was so windy last night, my wheelie bin had to attend a speed awareness course. Hey. Thank you for your comments. Nothing to do with what we're talking about. Leo, the Daily Mail, credit where it's due. Iran has found a way to stop people taking selfies, so, you know.
So women face the death penalty for sending a photo of themselves without a veil under Iran's new morality laws. This is to promote a culture culture of chastity and hijab. Matt, I told the Muslim Council of Britain I wasn't going to mention Muslims today. And it's just, I mean, we've got to cover what's in the papers. You know what I mean? It's a paper preview show. So this is, I mean, Iran's got an Islamic theocratic government, which obviously I think is wonderful because I don't want to go to jail. And they've got punishments for women caught promoting nudity, indecency, unveiling or improper dressing that include flogging and fines, and also the death penalty, because, you know, why not have the death penalty for women taking photos of themselves? Seems completely reasonable to me. So Amnesty International has slammed the new laws, claiming that, well, they're Islamophobic, claiming that women could be sentenced to death for sending videos of themselves unveiled to media outside the Islamic Republic. I don't know, I mean, like Gavin Esler says we shouldn't mention this because it's bad to mention it. I think we should mention it because, you know, women's rights are under threat in the Islamic world, and these are values that are now, you know, we're seeing some of these values popping up in the UK. So I think we need to talk about it. We need to maybe say, you know, maybe the death sentence for women taking photos of themselves isn't the right punishment. Maybe there should be no punishment.
It comes to something when it's the Daily Mail that are sticking up for women and equality.
Because normally they hate women.
This is time and time again. This is the sort of story you'd you know, I take a pop at The Guardian once a day. It makes me feel better about myself. This is the sort of story The Guardian should be leaning on. It's the sort of story that should be on the front page of The Guardian. I can't understand, Guardian, why it's not, because it absolutely should be. So it's left to the Daily Mail, which means to everybody else who doesn't like things like GBNews and the Daily Mail, this is seen as in some way racist. Once again, it's another another ism. It's not.
You know for a fact if Trump had introduced this law, it would be on the front cover of the
my
Guardian.
goodness. You know, maybe it's only a matter of time before Keir Starmer does. But, the irony that they call these things morality laws is unbelievable. This... you really do feel... I mean, Iran, technically, are a bit of an enemy of ours. They don't... You know, the compatibility of the East and the West now is becoming further and further apart. It's almost like they might as well live on Mars and have Mars rules. We really don't have any compatibility in terms of our sensibilities whatsoever, and this, to us, just seems abhorrent. But once again, it's down to the Daily Mail to stand up for the women of Iran. I don't understand. We're not going to do anything, are we? We're not going to be able to achieve anything. But at least if we...
Do you not think there's a hope that change is happening over there anyway? Over the last few years, there have been more stories about the protests, about the...
Yeah, and they always end in a flogging or a stoning or a death. And, yes, you're absolutely... Steve, I'm sorry I troll on that point, because it's a really good point, because we are seeing more and more of an uprising. But, of course, it's being squashed, because every time any woman does anything over there, they are just trampled upon, literally.
Yeah, they kind of disappear, don't they? But at some point, you've got to hope there's a tipping point at which that is a culture where the women get to stand up.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the Iranian regime is hanging on by its fingertips, and especially with, you know, regime change in Syria, which is right next door, I think they're going to be under even more pressure. And people tend to... It's not always a morality thing that makes people stand up and overthrow a government. It tends to be if they don't have enough to eat, if the economy's been tanking. And they've had, you know, decades now of economic stagnation, so I think that people are going to... You know, they regularly rise up, and I think next time it could possibly overthrow the government.
OK. Well, now we can cross to a different part of the world, Leo, The Guardian, and here's one onion that will make Alex Jones cry.
Yeah, so a US judge has halted the onion takeover of Infowars in the Alex Jones bankruptcy case. So this is just for a bit of backstory. So Alex Jones was declared bankrupt in 2022 and was forced to liquidate his assets to pay $1.3 billion in legal judgments to the families of 20 students and 6 staff members who were fatally shot in the 2012 massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut. So, you know, he spread this conspiracy theory that, you know, there were crisis actors and all this sort of stuff, which, you know, I don't... For me, you know, a lot of conspiracy theories come true. That one's not going to come true, as far as I'm going to tell. I think Alex Jones now accepts that, but you know, he was declared bankrupt, and so he had to sell his Infowars media empire, and basically was sold off to the Onion for like an absolute fraction of what it's worth. I mean, this thing generates a huge amount of money. Obviously, they weren't going to use it to generate money. The Onion had no intention of continuing with, you know, conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So they were just going to run funny articles on it. But there's obviously, you know, the fact that there was no sort of competitive bidding process or a properly competitive bidding process means that they didn't get the right amount of money. So Elon Musk shone a spotlight on it, and now the judge has stepped in and stopped this sort of, you know, dodgy deal.
Yeah, and of course Elon Musk is, an interesting character within this, because this is kind of a rebellion to Elon Musk buying X. It's kind of saying Onion are now have sort of fallen to the left, and as a result, they are buying Infowars as a spite, really. They're not going to do anything with it. It doesn't work out as a win, because they're not going to take their Onion fans with them onto Infowars. It doesn't remain Infowars. They don't suddenly start celebrating that the water has turned the frogs gay, because, why can't frogs be gay, Steve?
That's true. I'm all in favour. Hey, it's 2024. I think in many ways you are the Alex Jones of the UK. You needed to get the voice. You needed that. The show's nearly over, so let's take another quick look at the front pages. Let's start with The Express. Killed by the very adults who should have loved and protected her. The Telegraph goes with Labour bid to bulldoze the home counties. Daily Mail has little Sara let down by everyone supposed to protect her. And the Metro, not even a tear for Sara. The Guardian, ministers to axe more than 10,000 civil service jobs in budget purge. And the Daily Star says rise of psycho scumbag chatbot zombies, whatever those words mean. That's it for tonight's show. Thanks to my guests Leo and Paul. Josh Howie will be here tomorrow night at 11. Joined by Kerry Marks and Aideen McQueen. If you're watching at 5, stay exactly where you are. Breakfast on the way next. And until the next one, have yourself a good one.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. The next 24 hours will be rather gloomy for most of us, with a lot of low cloud, mist and fog, some patchy drizzle too, but clear and frosty for some, most notably those areas that have seen sunshine during the last 24 hours. Scotland, mostly central and northern parts of mainland Scotland, where we'll see clear spells continuing overnight. Frost widely forming under those clear skies and some patches of fog. But eastern Scotland and the far north and west, mostly cloudy. Likewise for Northern Ireland, England and Wales. And in fact, across the east of England, increasingly low cloud will lead to a gloomy start to Thursday, with largely drizzly rain starting to move in from the North Sea, and that will reach parts of the Midlands by dawn, and it's going to be dreary and damp in these areas. Southwest England, similar conditions, but for the west and north of Wales, perhaps some brightness coming through. Likewise for the far north of Northern Ireland, but otherwise Northern Ireland's mostly cloudy. The cloud beginning to spill into southern Scotland as well, but elsewhere across Scotland, where we do have the clear skies overnight, it's going to be a chilly start to the day, and in some spots, once again, temperatures will struggle above 0 throughout daylight hours. Some patchy fog persisting in places as well, but the gloomiest skies, I suspect, by now will be across much of England into East Wales as well, with outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. 8 to 10 Celsius in the south, a little milder compared with the recent days, but staying cold for parts of Scotland. Now, by Friday morning, the low cloud in the south and east will be spilling its way into southern Scotland as well as western Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland. So for most of the UK, Friday is a cloudy day. There'll be outbreaks of rain and drizzle as well. But into the weekend, those outbreaks of rain will start to sink south and introduce milder air across the board.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you just